Hi, I'm Jeff Hayes, the executive producer of The Healing Miracle. I'm about to do something I've never had to do before any docuseries or any documentary that I've ever produced, but I actually wanted to put on the front of this a disclaimer or even a warning about what we're talking about. In this series, we have about 70 different experts. It's a very controversial topic, and I have some very controversial people in this series. We have people that are using cord blood stem cells. We have people using amniotic tissue. We have people using adipose tissue. We have people using bone marrow as the source for stem cells. They all think that they're the best. And to some degree, they disagree with one another, and the FDA disagrees with a lot of them. Because of this, I didn't favor any one company. I tried to bring you the information that you'll need to make a decision. For me, I love stem cells. I think that it is the greatest advance in medicine since the antibiotic. But I'm a filmmaker. Don't take advice on anything but filmmaking from a filmmaker. This doesn't replace your relationship with your doctor. My goal was to try to bring you all the information that you would need to make a decision. You'll see in this series, one of the things we have in there is I actually was injected with stem cells, so it's pretty clear where I landed on that. But like I said, I'm a filmmaker, not a scientist. I hope I brought you the information you'll need. The reason for this warning up front is don't watch 15 minutes of this and then run out and get stem cells. You don't have to watch all of it, but watch a significant amount of this series because there's a tremendous amount of information here. It's an incredibly controversial subject, and we're bringing you some very controversial people. I think at the end of it, you'll have everything you need to know about whether you want to use stem cells for your health. For me, I do know that I believe that we have the right to use our bodies to heal itself, and I think this is a spectacular way to do it. I hope you enjoy The Healing Miracle. I think we did a good job, and I hope you like it.
Hi, I'm Gretchen Jensen, host of The Healing Miracle.
And I'm Sarah Sheehan, producer of The Healing Miracle, The Truth About Stem Cells.
Sarah, you had a chance to interview people from coast to coast of our great country, everything from physicians to scientists to researchers to professional athletes to everyday people and even politicians. Tell me what happened in Texas.
Texas was the most amazing experience. We were fortunate enough to be able to speak with Texas legislators. And Texas is the first state that has passed legislation that allows terminally or chronically ill patients to receive stem cell treatments. It was such an emotional trip and one that I'm so happy you're going to see a part of today.
I'm so happy to hear that because I'm from Texas and everything great comes out of there, right? So thank you, Texas, for being the first one. Now, this is how it's going to work. We have 9 full episodes that will run for 24 hours, but right now, let's watch episode 1.
I'm Drew Springer, and I'm a state representative here in Texas. I represent House District 68, the most rural district, and has about 10% of the land mass and about 165,000 constituents.
So tell me about this bill and how you got involved with this.
You know, I got involved with it because Chairman Parker, who's a good friend of mine, our wives actually were in school together at the University of Dallas, and they've gone their separate ways, and my wife was hurt in a diving accident, broke her back. And so Tan knew that my wife could benefit from stem cells. He didn't realize my knowledge and how much I've studied it over the last couple of decades. And he asked me to sign on to the bill, and what can we do to move this along? And so we started working together. You know, we brought the scientists, the doctors in to make sure we were doing the right things, all the stakeholders to really put a good piece of legislation, not just one that says, hey, we want to give everybody the right to try, but something that was actually practical that could then be rolled out into from a legislative process into a regulatory one that an oversight board could be able to look at and make sure it was doing the right things and really treating patients.
When is your wife going to get treatment?
You know, we think that it'll probably be in 2018. That's really what we're holding out hopes for. As I tell everybody, you know, go out and research everybody, because there's several different methods. You may find one is more effective for whatever you're trying to treat versus another, and you got to have a level of comfort, and you also want to make sure they're responsible, you know, practitioners and are doing the right things for you. And you know, and everybody has that responsibility. And I know, you know, in this community, a lot of times we're grasping for hope. But we have to have a level head, and a lot of times, you know, they need that support group there with that patient to make sure they are making the right choices.
What is your expectation for your wife's treatments?
You know, my expectation is that she's able to regain some level of functionality, that we have a quality of life that will allow us to do a lot of the things that we've wanted to do. You know, we've talked about living on a sailboat in our retirement years. You know, in just physical condition, that's probably not possible. But we think that with some level of, you know, recovery, that she would be able to have that as an option.
Tell me when you met your wife.
I met my wife in 1988, just graduated from the University of North Texas, and we started dating, and met her there, and we sort of had fell in love over that summer, and went from there.
Tell me about her accident.
It was actually Labor Day, right at 28 years ago, roughly, and we were out at a lake. I'd grown up in that area, had jumped off these cliffs, and I went up, dove off, and she said she wanted to try it. She jumped in and just hit the water wrong. Didn't hit anything in the water, and immediately knew that something was wrong. She had to be airlifted to a hospital in Fort Worth, about 100 miles away. She spent the next week in ICU. I slept on the floor for that whole week, and you know, then she did as most spinal cord injuries, you know, went to a rehab hospital, and then has progressed from there.
So where was her fracture?
She was an L1 fracture. It's just a compression, incomplete. So she does have some feeling in her legs and a little bit of movement.
Right, and so she's not ambulatory.
No, she's unable to walk, so she's been in a wheelchair. Now, most people would say, if I tell you everything she's done, and so since then we've had 3 children. She graduated college, she graduated law school, she's done a whole lot of things, and most people, when they hear everything else, have a hard time believing it is somebody in a wheelchair. So she hadn't let it slow her down.
Right, well, she sounds like an absolutely extraordinary woman. She really does.
Yeah, she's put up with me for 26 years.
Well, there you go. Right, so what is your understanding of how stem cells work?
Well, you know, there's a few different ones, but it allows your body to be able to cure itself. And as we get older, we lose, our stem cells just sort of wear out. And so this re-injects those back into sort of a youthful, you know, almost a newborn type of stage, to where, you know, when you get hurt, they can find those things and be able to cure it, and your body's going to be able to heal itself.
And so tell me about the evidence that backs up some of these claims.
Sure, and I'll speak in, well, one, let me say, you know, I've served with Governor Perry, now Secretary Perry, and my former predecessor, Representative Hardcastle, both of them who had stem cells done in the state of Texas before the ban was put in place. I've seen my predecessor, who probably wouldn't have retired from the legislature if he knew it was going to be as successful as it is. In his last year of service, he was hardly able to walk up a step to be able to get on stage and give a speech. Now he walks the halls of the state capitol. You know, and this is for the 6 years that I've been serving. And so, you know, I've seen the proof in there. You've seen the ones with spinal cord injuries that have seen improvements, and some of them do gain leg movements, some of them do become ambulatory. A lot of them really, in the spinal cord community, gaining that quality of life, being able to have control of your body and your functionality is so much more important, because a lot of things that shorten the life expectancy of somebody that's had a spinal cord injury is that they get infections, they get UTIs, they get other things, pressure sores, because they don't realize that they're not moving enough. And those are the things that really, harm the spinal cord community.
Why was the ban put in place?
It's hard to say. There's always conflicting groups that have other alternative motives. Some like the idea that pharmaceuticals may be the answer to selling. Some find out that there was a bad actor in here that was taking advantage of people, and so let's just shut it down for everybody. We can be intelligent at how we do it, and I think the bill that we passed does that, because it makes sure we are regulating it, we are having oversight, we're making sure those snake oil salesmen aren't here to prey on the needy. But that being said, hey, we're a free society in the United States. That's what we want to be. If we stopped everybody from doing that, we wouldn't have a lot of people driving the certain type of cars that they're driving today.
Right. So what's the next step after this bill has been passed?
Now that the bill's been passed, we're going to look at the implementation, seeing that the clinics are set up here, making sure that the Texas Medical Board starts authorizing these clinics to be able to do this practice in Texas, and I think that's where we start at.
And when will this become widely available in Texas?
That's the great question of how quick. I think it's going to be faster than people expect. As soon as the medical board starts approving these, like I said, we have some of the greatest scientists in the world right here in Texas doing this. And the fact that they can open a clinic to be able to do their work and continue that through, I think we're going to see it move very quickly. And I think we're going to see people from around the United States come to Texas to have this, because they don't want to go to another country to have that work done.
That was my next question, was going to be, could people come from, let's say, New York to come to Texas and have this done legally?
Absolutely, they can. And so, and the unique thing is, we have literally heard from at least a dozen other states that want to do the same thing we're doing, because that same community of people with MS, with people with spinal cord injuries, are reaching out to their state legislature and says, see what Texas did, why can't we do that here in Georgia? Why can't we do it here in New York and be able to do that?
So what does the bill actually entail? What does the bill actually say?
Well, what the bill does is it allows a doctor in a clinic setting to be able to extract your stem cells from yourself, and then be able to process those through to where they multiply, and then be able to re-inject them back into your body. That's where the issue is right now. Today in Texas, you can have them taken out, you can have them sped up and grown, but before they can inject them back to you, you have to fly to Panama or Mexico or China to have that done.
Now, I know that there are some stem cell treatments that are legal to be done, but those are things where the cells are not treated, is that correct?
Well, they do very little treatment to them. They do some, but it is a very temporary type of thing, and not over the same process, and it's not put back into you from an IV injection standpoint as well.
So what will other states need to go through to catch up to Texas?
Well, we're seeing several laws around the country, really sort of this right to try. Hey, it's your body. You've got an illness, you should have this right to be able to do this. So there's several different legislation pieces that sort of fit this same mold, and I think everybody is looking to do that. And it's really saying, when you have a critical illness or a chronic disease, you should be able to experiment, try some things that are proven out there without having to wait through the FDA to clear everything to be able to be done.
So how did the FDA get their hands in this? I mean, these are cells from your body. This is not something that's being manufactured.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're going to do is go up to Washington with Secretary Perry, Tan Parker, myself, and several others in the community to make sure that the FDA doesn't try to overreach and say, no, we still, even though you passed it, we want to stop you from being able to do that. It's imperative that we have the ability to try this. And then, when you look at it, you say, okay, so I have cells injected in my body. What can be the problem of it? Is it's ineffective. I lost some money, and it may not have given me the amount of cure that I was looking for, but it's, the proof of so many other things that it creates more problems just isn't there.
The other thing is you know, this country is having an exploding opioid misuse epidemic. You know, a lot of the opioids being prescribed because people are in constant and chronic pain.
Right.
I would see this as something of a solution to that.
Well, I think it can be part of a solution, absolutely, because there are those that have that chronic illness that are looking for relief, and this very well could be the stage of doing it. And that's one of the things is the great unknown. Because we're not documenting it here in the United States, we don't know what the potentials are of this. What illnesses are they going to help, and which ones are they not going to be that successful with?
How do we get a central sort of registry of all of the results of stem cell and make that something that's available to all states?
You know, from the Texas Medical Board, we will have reporting, and so we will be collecting that. You know, those are open to the public to be able to see how those go through there. And I think that that's the key thing is, you know, making sure we are getting, you know, whose treatment's working. There's several, I mean, there's not one stem cell process that's being out there. There's some with bone marrow. There's some with one, clearly we don't do embryonic stem cells. Right. We do umbilical cord. There's that big word I was looking for up there, of which, you know, that's one part that has my wife the most excited. It was 17 years ago now that our youngest child was born. And when she was born, we knew that this was on the horizon somewhere, and we banked her cord blood. And so we've saved that. And we've been waiting for the day that this umbilical cord could be used in some form or fashion to be able to cure her.
Wow. Wow, that was forward thinking. Tell me how current laws are stopping people from getting these treatments.
Well, I mean, today is one, it's the problem of being able to travel. There's a lot of people who can't travel, even to Panama. They can't get on a plane for several hours to be able to fly down and do that process. In the case of stem cells, it takes multiple treatments. I know when we looked and researched it, it was at least a 6-week time frame that my wife would have to live in another country while we have kids still in school. And it's one of those that, you know, it was just sort of, she didn't feel comfortable doing it at that time. Whereas if it was here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas, you know, she could go in the morning, have a treatment, be back home in the afternoon, and may have to go back again in 4 days, 8 days, whatever that process is. You know, can still have the family lifestyle, be able to do that, and also still be able to work.
How do we get this covered by insurance companies?
Well, I think that that's sort of the next step. I think a lot of this is going to be in the prove-up side of it. Let's get it going here. Let's see the results come in for it. I think once you start seeing the results, you know, and whether it's $20,000 today to do it in Panama, and it still may be somewhat close to that same price tag when we early get going. Of course, I remember when my wife had LASIK at $5,000, and it's clearly much cheaper now to be able to do that. I think we will see the price come down as we do it from here. But then that just being said, my wife just got another manual wheelchair that cost $32,000. And you could think of all the other costs, you know, the regular things from doctor's checkups to supplies and everything else. The United States would save money over on our Medicaid even, and plus Medicare as well, if they were being able to have cures and treatments that improved the quality of life for the patients.
But right now, it's still a chunk of change.
It absolutely is.
And that's prohibitive for the average American.
It is. I mean, there's no doubt. But I would also say that probably, and I'll speak to the stem cell side of it, most people are continuing to reach out of their pocket every single day to pay for things, whether it's hand controls for a car, whether it's another ramp to be able to get into something that they want to go to. Life is not very accessible, even after the ADA over 20 years ago. And so if you factor even those costs in, I think even the individual out of their own pocket could see that. I think we're also going to see those that don't have the wherewithal to be able to do it. I think we're going to see the foundations, the grants. I think there will be financial support for those that are in need. I mean, let's face it. You get an 8-year-old kid who breaks his back that has just a tragic story and a single mother and doing all the great things. Communities around the state of Texas and the United States rally around those causes. And if it was a $10,000 or $15,000 treatment to be able to give that kid hope to walk again, I think we'd be really hard-fetched to find out that people weren't there to help when in those cases as well.
We have a huge aging population in the baby boomers. And I see them taxing our medical community, insurance, everything, Medicare, tremendously. All of these treatments, all these medical treatments, operations, medications. I would think that this would represent an enormous savings to the system.
I agree with you. I think that, and that goes back to where I say some of the procedures you have to have done, the supplies you have to do. I think that it could easily be, in some cases, it might be a medicine that you're able to get off of that costs more than the treatment does in just 1 year of the medicine. And so, you know, we may see that very well be a cost saver. And, you know, you don't, I've, for one of the rare times as a fiscal conservative, I have looked at this more from a compassionate side than a financial side. But I think there is a lot to be said about the financial savings that we could see from the benefits really being reached with spinal cells.
Tell me about your legacy in this bill. I mean, you have a lot of personal skin in this.
You know, I did. It was one of those where I had signed on as joint author. I was glad to support it. I did not think I was going to be doing any heavy lifting in it. And as we came late in the night in the state of Texas, we have the final day to be able to pass a bill. And somehow this bill was scheduled for 3 days earlier, but because of delay tactics, it fell to the last day. I saw it on the schedule. I thought by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that bill will be passed. Everything will be great. I went to a meeting about 9 o'clock. I came back about 9:30. That bill is now buried behind one bill that a group had decided they were going to make sure no other bills passed. And it wasn't that they were trying to kill this bill, but they were doing parliamentary procedures trying to kill something else. And I said, you know, I don't know if God touched me. It says, now is the time to do something. And I got up and called what we called a privileged speech. And I asked them to please allow that other bill to go forward, which they really didn't have a problem with, and to let us hear this bill, to give those people in Texas and really the United States the ability to cure their own bodies. And you know, that was the first step in what became really a heavy lift to make sure this bill got passed.
But we have a chance tonight in this chamber to hear HB 10. It wasn't anywhere near towards where most of us probably predicted the end of the calendar would have been. What it deals with is stem cell research. You can go to Panama and pay a bunch of money and maybe do these things, but there's some folks right here in South Lake, Texas, and DFW, North Texas, have done some remarkable things. Might give somebody like my wife a chance to walk. Maybe a high school football player that y'all know. I know TCU had a gentleman named Kent Walter, broke his neck playing against Alabama. Maybe it'd help Kent just have a little bit more use of his arms to be able to breathe a little easier. Maybe my wife wouldn't walk, but there's a whole lot of struggles, and I hear an awful lot of people in this chamber talk about those with disabilities, and us trying to do things to help them. But I'll be damned if we don't have the chance tonight to hear the very next bill that opens up the doors of medical science to be able to done right here in the state of Texas. And I understand that other people are mad that their stuff hadn't been heard, but I'll tell you what, I'd trade every one of my bills I've passed, every single one of them, to get the chance to hear HB 10. Because I pray to God every time I go to Mass, every time I close my eyes, that one day my wife, and not for my sake, but for her sake, I have the chance to have that opportunity again, to be able to walk, to be able to come down. And members, I understand. Sometimes we have to look past our own frustrations. And we got to look for the bigger picture. And what are we doing for the state of Texas? And by stopping this next bill, it's just, and I know, I'm going to apologize to Representative Stickland. He probably didn't know why I was so upset when I tried to talk to Representative Shaheen and just ask him a simple question to say, is there any way that we can just let this next bill get up? I didn't want to do this. I'm not looking for this attention. I'm just looking for a solution. And I've grasped at straws, and I pray to God. And I know that's what and when I really think deep down in our heart, the most moving things I've heard from each and every one of you is when you talk from your heart, whether it's Ken talking about ovarian cancer or so many other causes that we've heard. I mean, those are the kind of things that really move us. It's not about cutting taxes. It's not about, A through F or those. It's what we do that really, really impacts Texans, making their lives easier and better and removing some of the burdens. And there's not every day that we have that chance to do that. This is one of those days. And to know that we're minutes away from that being the possibility. And I know it's every member's right, and I understand the rules, and I know we can do some different things to probably even move this along. And, I thought about doing it the other way. I could easily went around and try to talk 25 into you and said, this is so important to me, will you please call this to question so we can get to the next bill, and then call that bill to question, and then I could have just gone home and did it. But I respected what some of the other members said about the process. We don't want to set that precedence of overriding people when they really have objections. But that being said, I want to use this time in my speech. And when I ride off into the sunset, I'll count this as my final speech. And you'll never hear from me, hopefully, ever again from personal privilege. But members, I'm asking you if there's any way we can move to get to 8, 10, and be able to help these Texans that are struggling for so many different things, not just stem cells. From stem cells, but not just spinal cord injuries. MS and so many other different things. This is so promising. And Dr. Bonin knows so much about this science, and Tan. And I know Doc Anderson was in the deal and heard the magnificent thing these people are doing and the opportunities we have to give to Texans. And it's right in front of us. And to know that the apple is so close and I can't grab it just... So members, please, if you can find it in your heart, I would appreciate it if we could move a little bit forward tonight. Thank you.
Your speech was very emotional, and I challenge anybody to watch it and not get a little teary. Yeah. What were you thinking while you were up there?
Well, one, I was thinking my wife is going to kill me when I get back home. She's, very private person, and so the fact that and I tried not to make it all about her, and because it really isn't. My wife's been injured for 28 years now, and holding out hope, as I even said, she probably won't walk because of this. But if it is for somebody else who's following and has the same accident that she has, to be able to do that, it's worth fighting for. And just making sure that everybody heard it. It was pleasing to be able to see really everybody understand that night we were actually there for something bigger than ourselves. Everybody surround, you get choked up, you're surrounded by your good friends, your colleagues. And some people, you may have fought with them for 130 days prior to that one on a whole bunch of, partisan issues. But at that point in time, they realized this is for all Texans, not just a group of Texans.
Yeah, it was very emotional to see everybody crowd around you, offering, physical and emotional support. Yeah. It was really, I was very proud of Texas.
Yeah. It was definitely a big night. And, then we had to go, unfortunately, we thought it would pass because it passed the House. The governor tweeted out that night, I look forward to signing it. And then some of the folks in the Senate had a problem, and we had to make sure that they saw the light and how beneficial it was going to be, and we were finally able to move them through it as well.
Very interested in how other states would follow Texas's suit. What would be the major hurdles they would have to overcome?
Well, I think clearly, we've shown them the path. I think that they can look at our legislation. They may have to tweak it for some of their state regulatory boards that oversee doctors, oversee clinics, and be able to do that. But I think we have laid the framework in for other states to be able to follow quickly.
Do you think it's going to be difficult for them to follow?
I think it may be early on. I think they may see some of the same resistance we saw with, the FDA knows all, so let's not rush ahead of the FDA. But once again, I hope that in Texas we start seeing results very quickly. And, the first time we see 4 or 5 folks that have MS with positive results being documented in the United States from that standpoint, it's going to be hard to stop that train once it leaves the station.
I also think each state is going to have a champion, such as you and your colleagues, to sort of push it through and really get emotionally behind it. Do you recommend that?
It absolutely helps, and I'll tell you, I was late in the one pushing it through. There was an advocacy group here in Texas that a group of ladies, and along with my predecessor, Rick Hardcastle, were at the Capitol constantly putting a face with the bill. And that is so important with legislation, not just looking on a piece of paper, but tell me how's it going to work? How's it going to make my life better? How's it going to make my constituents' lives better? Because that's what really everybody says. How do I take care of my voters? And in this case, God bless, we're doing the right thing, but we're taking care of all voters in this.
Would you recommend, let's say, the citizens of New York or any other state who might want to pass this, to have sort of like a kind of like a groundswell of citizen voter support, lobbying?
Absolutely.
Local?
No, I think that's key, and we're lucky. I mean, if this was 30 years ago, you didn't have social media, you didn't have Facebook, Twitter, and all the things that can round those groups up. Help energize them, mobilize them, get the message out. How do you contact your representative? Who are we going to find to have the champion? I'll tell you what, it is hard to find in a body of 150, and that's what the Texas House has, somebody who's not affected. Chairman Parker's wife is effective, may see some benefits. My wife may see some benefits. I know Senator Mendez. His wife has MS and was in the hospital the night we were debating it on the Senate floor that I was standing there. And so, everybody is touched by somebody who will benefit from stem cell therapy. And it's finding those people that can be that advocate. We see it in so many, whether kids have autism, we argue that in schools. Well, this is the same thing in the medical side of things. It's finding those that personally identify with them and becoming that voice and that advocate.
Thank you so much for taking time out to speak with us about this, and congratulations.
No, it's my pleasure. It's anything that can move this forward, that can help people, I think is a fantastic thing. God's put us in unique places for reasons that we don't understand, and I feel somehow this is definitely where He wanted me.
I'm Senator Paul Betancourt. I'm the Texas Senator for Senate District 7, which is the west side of Houston.
You recently were involved in a bill, HB 810. Can you tell me about that?
Well, this is one of the really good days of being in the Texas legislature, because when you can help save lives, it's the coolest thing that you can do to pass a bill that will help folks extend or even save their own life. And this is a bill that actually followed on a bill that we had last session, which was named for Andrea Sloan, and we started basically a process in Texas where if you could get access to phase 1 drugs and maybe extend your life if you had cancer, that was a bill that we passed last session. So this session, some really good people, Tan Parker and Drew Springer, who are very good state representatives, came to me with a bill and wanted me to carry it that would allow folks that were chronically ill to use adult stem cells. Now, this is all touchy subjects because you have people that are worried when they hear stem cell, they'll think infant stem cell versus adult. There's also kind of a more traditional establishment that's not sure that adult stem cell therapies are ready. However, fortunately in this case, both are wrong, and this bill is going to help save and extend lives for the chronically ill.
Right, and so what is your understanding of how the stem cells work?
Well, everyone has adult stem cells, okay? And the good news is that generally they can be harvested, brought out of your body, then reprocessed, and tuned up to do whatever we need to do with them. Now, we're just in the beginnings of these therapies, so the permutations here are endless. But the one that I can see that clearly works is for neurological diseases, because the testimony that we took was at the public hearing was very powerful, because I had two MS survivors next to me, one that had MS for 18 years, the other one had MS for 12, and they had been getting this type of adult stem cell treatments out of the country. But you can see that their quality of life was high, that their energy level was good, plus their ability to function, in a public hearing, was really tops. And so what I did in the hearing was I literally raised their hands and said, we're talking about the stem cells in your arms, their arms, all of our arms that can be used, can be harvested, chemically, processed, and then basically reintroduced back into the host subject. And so this was proof positive. And I think it was at that point in time that we won the vote in the committee.
The FDA's involvement to this is a little confusing because it's not actually a drug. It's something that you're manufacturing yourself.
Right. So in my mind, that's why I think what we've done in Texas is the right solution, because literally why I held up both the survivors' hands was to make that point that this is their adult stem cells. This isn't somebody manufacturing them off the in a pharmaceutical laboratory. They are being chemically altered, but this is you. This is you taking advantage of your adult stem cells and then having that brought back to you in a processed form. And quite frankly, government needs to stay out of this as much as possible. I don't see what I'm watching. I'm hoping that what the protocols we set up in Texas will be enough to get the job done. I think state solutions are generally better than federal solutions on these issues, and we just need to keep government out of the way of curing people or extending their life. If you can save lives, it's the best day you can be as a legislator is doing that with a bill. But even if we're talking about just extending the life and keeping people's quality of life longer, government should stay out of the way and let good things happen.
So how does the right to try laws fit into all of this?
Well, it's the same philosophy, okay? Because look, if you really are pro-life, then you really should be pro-right to try, okay? Because what that means is that you're giving even like chronically ill or terminally ill people a chance to try. See, that's all this is. It's just a chance to try. It's not a guarantee. It's not, your adult stem cells may not save you. The FDA drug that's in phase 2 or phase 3 may not work. But there is no fact or supposition of fact that the individual in the 21st century should not have the right to try to use these type of therapies at this point. It's a big government preposterous idea that somehow that only somebody in Washington and some bureaucratic agency knows exactly the right solution for the person from Maine to California or Maine to Florida or Maine to Hawaii in this case. So that's why I like our Texas solution so far.
And it's wonderful, and it's somewhat heroic, and it's great that people are going to be flocking to Texas now to get these treatments. But what kind of hurdles do you think other states are going to see?
Well, they're going to have the same debate we had in the Health and Human Services Committee, which is a tough debate to have, okay? Because you have ways that the medical services have been delivered for a long time, and so this is an out-of-the-box solution, but a good one. And you have to realize that in the 21st century, we're going to need more of these. There's simply nothing conceptually wrong with the idea of taking your own adult stem cells, harvesting them, chemically treating them, and returning them. But that's a different way of doing things, and sometimes people can view that as a threat to the existing system. But it's really not, because you've got so many people that are going to need so much health care that you need every channel of distribution you can find. As a tag-in baby boomer, I'm looking at that hill thinking we've got all these people that are going to be needing help, and so we should understand that there's different channels to market, and the key thing is not to be afraid, because people can generate a lot of fear when they're in a debate. Because unfortunately, in legislative debates, fear, doubt, and uncertainty generally is something more difficult to overcome than a pure public policy, good pitch. So what I saw in the debate was actually a healthy one, and I had help coming up with the right solution. And more importantly, I think the senators felt like it was time that something really happens, because they wanted Texas to be the shining city on the hill for adult stem cell therapy. But some of them are just afraid of what would happen if bad people got control of some part of the process, or they abuse their patients, or just outright quackery or abuse or worse. So I think we've come up with a good balanced model. I think Texas will be the place to go for adult stem cell therapy. We will be that shining city on the hill that people will flock to. And I just can't wait to see in 5 to 10 years the hundreds of new therapies that are coming online because of a legislation like this. It's really gratifying to be part of it. It makes me want to go back to do it again when there's there may be other people telling me don't go back to the legislature because it's such a big time drain. But when you can save people's lives, it's worth every second of it.
Yeah. So speaking of that, how do you feel about this as sort of a legacy bill?
Well, the legacy will be, and you've heard from the doctors and others, is when I get a report from Michelle who tells me that there's 80 people on phase 2 and 3 drugs that weren't on before and they're all alive. Oh boy, that's a great legacy. And this bill has a tendency to be even more powerful of an impact because once people and the medical profession understands how to use these adult stem cells, there's just going to be, the use is going to be everywhere. We'll have multiple therapies that will be based upon taking your adult stem cells. You may have an MS therapy, you may have a Lou Gehrig's therapy, you may have whatever therapies, and they'll be known. And the key thing is that they'll be able to try to do it, because right now they couldn't have the ability. And I think that's the public policy win-win for everyone, is why not let people try? There's no reason in the 21st century not to let people try these advanced therapies. And I'm really excited about that. It's, I look forward to the legislative session. We have big fights about the budget, and we're trying to get property tax relief. And there's a lot of other good things we do, but we have in the past 2 years passed really good right to try legislation. And that's what keeps me coming back for a third try, because I just can't imagine what good things we'll be able to do in the next legislative session. Let me tell you, this was a heavy lift, even though it was a unanimous vote. It was a heavy lift because there's a lot of people that get very concerned about when things like this start. Is it really real? Is it going to help people or not? But when I watched Drew stand up and give that emotional speech, I knew he was going to get that bill out of the House. Okay, and it didn't matter what condition the bill was in, we were going to be able to fix it in the Senate. But when I saw everybody backing up Jose Menendez, that's when it really becomes nonpartisan, because it's really for the people of Texas and really for the people of the United States.
And that's inspiring.
No, of course it's inspiring. I mean, it was a great day, okay? And it was just, and as the debate was going on, more and more people were standing behind him. And so that's when, legislative sessions can be tough. There's a lot of ice that you have to melt to get down to people's hearts. But I'll tell you, there wasn't one heart on that Senate floor that wasn't affected by that debate that day. And that was what was really great. You saw the heart of Texas in that debate. And I just can't wait to see all the good things that are going to happen because of this bill in the future.
Thank you so much for having us here in the midst of everything that's going on in Texas right now.
Well, no, I think it's really important that everyone in Texas know about this, and I hope everyone in the United States will as well. So I'm really looking forward to this documentary.
Michael Hunsucker, and I work for Biocept, a liquid biopsy company. We actually help cancer patients, medical oncologists with their cancer patients, get on the right therapy, making sure that the drug that they're using is taking effect.
So you're within the medical community?
Yes, I've been in medical for about 30 years, as sales rep in different capacities.
Recently, you had a stem cell treatment.
Yes. I had a stem cell treatment on my knee, my right knee.
So tell me why you decided to do that instead of get a knee replacement, let's say.
Well, Actually, many years ago, I hurt my knee playing football, and I had an ACL replacement. And it was just to a point where it was just painful. I couldn't walk. My knee would click. My knee was probably 3 times swollen as my other knee. You couldn't even touch my knee. It was that painful. I play basketball. I love playing basketball with I've got twin boys that are 17, and I still play basketball full court with my twins and their friends. So I couldn't do that anymore, and that's my love. So I did some research and decided that I was going to try stem cells and see if that could help me.
So, I mean, was this chronically swollen? Was this a chronic pain?
Oh, it was always swollen. Chronic, swollen. It hurt all the time. It was either do something or get knee surgery, and I really didn't want to have knee surgery. I actually went to an orthopedic specialist, and he's like, "Yeah, we gotta redo your ACL. We gotta do surgery," and I'm like, "I don't think I want to go. I didn't want to do that route."
In addition to looking at surgery, did you ever think of getting shots for this? Did you ice it? Did you take painkillers? Like, what kinds of things did you do to manage it?
All the above. I iced it. I still went out and played basketball, and my knee would just be like swollen. I'd wrap it, ice it, take ibuprofen, painkillers, all the above. But I didn't want to stop playing sports and didn't want to stop doing what I was doing.
Well, it's also the way you're interacting with your kids. It's
absolutely.
It's a huge part of your life.
Exactly. I've been playing basketball my whole life, and that's something I really enjoy doing with my boys, and even my daughter loves to play basketball. So that's inside of me, and I didn't want to stop doing that.
So aside from the recreational effects, did you find that it was impinging upon your life in any other way? Your productivity, your relationships?
Couldn't walk hardly.
Really?
Yeah, it was painful. I'm a sales rep. I have to walk. I have to go in and out of doctors' offices and be able to walk upstairs. I couldn't walk upstairs, and I could not walk downstairs. It was that painful.
As a medical representative, also, it probably looks pretty bad if you're
if you're limping into a doctor's office. Absolutely, you're limping in. Mind if I borrow your crutches or put me in a wheelchair? But
wow.
It was painful.
So how many years do you think you were living with it like that?
Oh, probably 5, at least 5 or 6.
That's a long time.
But as time went on, it progressively the progression was worse. So it was to the point where, like I said, I couldn't even touch my knee without me going through the roof. It was that painful.
Did you lose sleep? I mean, were you sleeping?
Oh, there was many nights I couldn't sleep because you couldn't get the right angle, or you'd try to sleep on your side and then your knee would be on. No, I'd wake up all the time just banging my knee against my other knee, or rolling on, or even rolling wrong, and my knee would lock up, and then I couldn't even walk. So I'd have to wiggle my knee to make sure that it went back so I could just get out of bed. There were a few days that I just couldn't do anything.
That's horrific.
It was. And it wasn't me. It was
Right.
taking away what I wanted to do, so I had to do some research and figure out something, either that or just go get the surgery.
So instead of surgery, what was the thinking behind, all right, I'm going to just try stem cell?
Well, I did some research, looked into PRP, which is platelet-rich plasma. I did have an injection on my arm a couple of years ago, and some good friends of mine said, hey, look at stem cells. Look at PRP, but look at stem cells. And I already was familiar with PRP, but was not as familiar with stem cells. So doing some research, decided that even if the stem cell injection didn't work, it wouldn't. What's the worst thing that could happen? Nothing. You either get better or you're not going to get any worse. And that was at the point where it didn't matter. I couldn't get any worse, so why not?
I mean, did you have any reservations going into this?
To the stem cells, no. Because I knew if it didn't work, it wasn't going to hurt me.
Right.
It was worth the risk to at least get it done.
So you went to a doctor. Tell me his explanation of what he was going to do to your knee.
He suggested an amniotic fluid, which was the part of the stem cell. So there's a fluid that I guess has stem cells in it, which is part of amniotic fluid. So he also does PRP. So he's like, okay, we're going to do a stem cell, PRP, and amniotic fluid, and we'll mix that together and we'll inject it in your knee. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, trust me, you've had PRP before. So stem cells the PRP is definitely going to it's like going to enhance the stem cells. He goes, trust me, you'll love your results, but this is what I recommend. So I'm like, okay, well, it's definitely worth a try.
So you go in there.
Went in there.
What is he just shoots it into your knee?
Well, they drew my blood, spun it down for PRP, and then he also had a vial of stem cell. He showed me the vial. It was a 1 ml vial, and then a 1 ml vial of amniotic fluid. So he put my PRP with the amniotic fluid with the stem cells, and they actually put it in a syringe and just injected it into my knee in 3 places. So literally injected a needle into my knee, and I'm like, I hate needles. And I'm like, ooh. It was a little painful, but it wasn't that painful. I mean, it was, again, it's just like getting a shot, but I mean, they had to inject it into the knee.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, I just won't watch what you do.
So they shoot your knee, it hurts, but you weren't screaming.
No, I wasn't screaming. It didn't hurt that bad.
Right.
I mean, it was, it's a pinch. It's just like getting a shot.
Right. Mildly uncomfortable.
Mildly uncomfortable, but uncomfortable enough because he was going into the joint of the knee.
Well, yeah.
So it
Stands
was
to
a
reason.
little bit more uncomfortable
Right.
than getting a shot, but it was bearable.
Right. And I'm sure compared to what you're living with, it was
very,
okay.
very bearable.
Right. So then you just leave the doctor's office, that's it.
The doctor said, look, you're going to feel better in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. He told me within a 2-month period, so there's 2 weeks that I don't want you to do anything. You can walk, don't exert your knee. So in 2 weeks, you can exert it a little bit. So let's say half. 4 weeks, do 75%. 8 weeks, about 2 months, you're going to be 100%. I mean, you're going to be 100% to do whatever you want to do. So within a 2-month period, don't stress your knee totally, but just gradually work your way up. So I did that. I followed his recommendations, and I'm telling you, my knee feels like I did have surgery, like I did have a knee replacement. The swelling's gone. The pain is gone. I'm playing basketball with my boys again. I can walk without pain. I can go up and down stairs. My knee used to, every time I walked, it would click. It would just like click, 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 click. I don't have that clicking anymore. I feel 1,000 times better, 1,000,000 times better.
How long ago did you have this done?
About 2.5 months ago.
Oh, really? That recently?
Yes.
No swelling?
No swelling. None whatsoever. But I followed the protocol to make sure that, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to give it everything that I can, to make sure that if it works, great. If it doesn't, then again, I'm no better. I'm no worse off than what I was.
Right.
But I followed his protocol, and I'm truly amazed at what stem cells did for my knee.
So what do your boys think about this?
They love it. They're like, Dad's back on the basketball court again. Oh, I'm back playing golf again. So, I couldn't play golf because I couldn't twist the knee. It was that painful.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, 100% success.
1,000% success for as far as I'm concerned.
If you had a friend who was suffering from, shoulder, knee, or something, would you recommend this?
100,000%. I already have recommended it.
There have been no side effects from this? Nothing?
None whatsoever. None.
Why are not more people doing this? I've heard of so many knee replacement, hip replacement, shoulder surgery. Why are more people not doing this?
The reason that I think that more people are not doing this is is the lack of education, they don't know about stem cells. They know about knee replacements, they know about hip replacements, shoulder replacements. I mean, your orthopedic specialists are going to tell you do surgery. Well, that's how they get paid. I think the education is lacking in stem cells. I think the more people that hear about it are inquiring about it, but I think it just we need to get education. We need to get the word out about stem cells because it is incredible what it can do.
I mean, I've barely heard of people having it done, yet the only stories I have heard have been positive. So to me,
there's no downside to it. I mean, it's that dramatic. It's either works or it doesn't. But if it doesn't work, it's not going to hurt you.
Right.
And there are different forms of, in doing my research, there's adipose tissue, there's amniotic fluid, there's, you actually, I know of companies, what they used for me was the non-DNA side of the placenta. There's companies that harvest that and actually use those baby stem cells that do not have a DNA yet. In fact, I had such good success, I actually had my mom do a stem cell treatment.
Oh.
So, yes.
So what did she have done?
She had the amniotic fluid injection, just like I did. It's been 2.5 months, and she feels much better. Yeah, I feel 1,000 times better, but she feels much better. She has energy, and of course the doctor told her the same thing. Charlene, don't overdo it. You're going to feel better, and you're going to want to do everything you possibly can do, but don't overdo it. Well, of course, you can't tell my mom anything. She wanted to pick strawberries. She did this. She lives in we're from St. Louis, Missouri, so the humidity in the summer, and I'm like, Mom, you can't overdo this. But I will tell you, what was amazing was her CAT scan. Like I said before, she got a CAT scan 2 weeks ago. Not even 2 weeks ago. So she had a previous CAT scan to the CAT scan that she had when she saw her doctor, and her doctor said the results are just, what did you do? The results were phenomenal. She actually had a mass on her lung from her previous CAT scan, and the mass is not there anymore. And I'm not sure if it's the stem cells. We don't know, and the doctor even said, I can't say that was the stem cells. I can't say it wasn't. Something happened. But what did you do from the last CAT scan to this CAT scan, because the results are phenomenal? And my mom was like, well, I did stem cells. And that's when the doctor said, well, if you got $30,000 or $40,000 laying around, then yeah. But it was his lack of education of not knowing about stem cells. Because when she told him she did stem cells, he kind of threw it under the rug and said, okay, well, fine, right. Let's go on. But if he had the education of, hey, you know what, let's try stem cells. And I think every COPD patient should try stem cells.
I think when people hear stem cells, they think, expensive and foreign.
And I agree with you. And back in the day, you look at Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning had to go to Germany for stem cells. And for many, many years, stem cells, you couldn't do stem cells in the United States, from what my research was. Now, more and more doctors are getting into stem cells, and the FDA, I think, has kind of released the regulations a little bit, but I'm not 100% sure about regulatory. But even Tiger Woods has stem cells on his knee. I mean, he had to go out of the country to get stem cells. And everybody thinks, well, if I want stem cells, I got to go out of the country. Not necessarily. I don't think you have to do that nowadays like you did before, but it's not as expensive as everybody thinks. The treatment, it depends on what you do. You can do adipose tissue, or you can do amniotic fluid injections. You're looking at maybe $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 versus what people realize, $40,000 or $50,000 for stem cells, and you go over to a different country, and you got to, the plane, the hotel, and everything. You can do it here in the United States, and it's going to change your life. And if it doesn't, it's not going to hurt you. So what's the downside?
Right. I guess it's a win-win.
It's exactly a win-win.
Wow. That is really, really interesting. I mean, and if you think that these elite athletes that have access to the best doctors, the best treatment, the most cutting edge thing, and this is what they choose to do.
Why not the general population?
Right.
You know, again, I understand people, money's tight, and you know, it's a cash. It's not. There's no insurance reimbursement for it. Hopefully, someday there will be, and I think the insurance companies need to look at that.
Well, what I think doesn't make any sense is that you can have an operation, be out of commission for weeks, pay a doctor, pay an anesthesiologist, pay the hospital. By the time you're done, the insurance company has laid out tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
Why wouldn't they want to lay out less?
I thought exactly.
Makes
exactly
sense to
why I
me.
did stem cells. I didn't want to go through the surgery and being laid up and having to rehab and
Missing work.
not being able to walk, and not, you know, I mean, the doctor's like, okay, if you get your ACL replaced in surgery, you're not going to do anything for months. Well, doctor, I got to work. I got to put food on the table. That's not an alternative.
Right.
It
Right,
didn't
right.
work for me. So I'm like, okay, well, what else can I do? Try stem cells. And thank the Lord that I did, because it's changed my life. And it's been an incredible, life-changing event for me. So, and I didn't have to go under the knife, so.
It's the best part.
Best part.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I really appreciate you spending some time and talking about this.
My pleasure. I think more people need to, like I said, we got to get the word out. Education is the key. And I think the more people that know about stem cells, that it is a viable resource, that it's not going to hurt them. It's only going to help them. And like my mom, I had to talk her into doing that stem cell treatment. It took me a year to get her down here to South Florida for her to do the stem cells. And I told her, look, if it doesn't work, it's not going to hurt you. But where the stem cells in the infusion, the amniotic fluid, it literally goes to your heart and to your lungs first. And the research that I've done, and if it's going to your heart, it's going to go to your lungs. That's right there. So COPD patients, think about that. The regenerative qualities of regenerating your lung tissue, just like it helped her. And actually her nephew called me and wanted to know more information because his good friend has COPD. And I called him and told him about stem cells. And I told him what we did for my mother. And he's like, thank you. Thank you for that information. And he's going to get it done as well.
Most important thing, did your mom thank you?
Absolutely. She thanks me, yes, very much so.
Well, we thank you for sharing this with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I love that interview, Sarah. That was so fascinating. Welcome back in studio right now. Sarah, I know that I have a lot of questions I want to ask you as we go along, but first of all, are stem cells safe?
Well, we interviewed doctors, researchers, physicians of all kinds, and everybody said that the stem cells themselves are safe. The actual risk with the stem cell is getting an injection, which is the same risk as, let's say, getting a flu shot. So yes, they are safe.
That's just kicking off so much information that we want to share with you. But right now, here's what I want you to do. If you know people, I know you do. If you have family, you have friends, you have neighbors, colleagues that are suffering from some sort of pain that you think would benefit from learning about stem cell and everything that we want to share with you, I want you to go to all the links that we have listed right there. Please, this is the time that you need to share to make sure that they have the education that you're getting and that Sarah is sharing. But right now, let's go back to episode 1.
My name is Michael Banks. I have a company called Body by Banks. Personal training, corporate fitness training, anything related to fitness, we do it.
You just set some incredible record. Can you tell me about it?
You know, I'm glad that you asked, by the way. We set a world record, Guinness World Record, January 7th on Facebook Live, the largest Facebook Live virtual boot camp ever.
Wow.
And
That's
then again.
amazing. So
Yeah.
all those people working together to like get healthy.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
Exactly, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we were excited about that.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you.
We're here to talk about stem cells. Tell me about your injury. Tell me about your treatment.
Well, first of all, being in the industry that I am in, I'm really skeptical of a lot of things that come across my desk as far as
Right.
me taking a look at things.
Right.
But when I had a personal injury in the fitness world, we can't afford to be, not being able to work.
Right.
And so I was contemplating surgery like the normal person would be, and I kept hearing about stem cell. Did a little research. I met a guy, Dr. Randy Woodward, and we became friends, and we talked about it. And I said, you know what, I'm up for the challenge. Now, here's an amazing thing about this. Not knowing too much about stem cell, I thought I would take this opportunity to educate my virtual community of clients
Right.
about stem cell, okay? So little did I know I would get these kind of results that quick.
Right.
So we videotaped everything. Day one, when I got the shot, working out the gym. And so what happened was the second week, I can recall this, I was working with a client and I was demonstrating a squat. Now, mind you, prior to that, I couldn't do that.
Well,
couldn't walk upstairs.
What was your injury?
It was a meniscus tear, left knee.
Total or partial?
Tear, complete tear. And so I was having a problem because I teach a program called Torched, and so I'm a mover for what I do. And so I was looking at the fastest and quick and healthiest way to get back.
Right.
And so I said, I'll try this. So the first week, we recorded everything. We walked into the facility, the shot in the knee.
Tell me about the shot. What did that feel like?
I'm gonna tell you this, no one likes getting shot in the knee. And so it was quite scary, but he numbed it up.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not gonna look,
Yeah.
I just can't. I mean, to me, the needle was this big, but it really was that big.
Because I'm going to get shot in the knee later today, so that's why I'm asking. So,
You know
okay.
what? It was a nice pinch. But,
pinch, okay.
But just imagine something going in your knee.
Yeah, okay.
You know, it was
I'm gonna
kind of
throw
tough
up.
for me.
Okay.
Didn't throw up. I think they gave me a lollipop at the end, so I was excited. But the second week after the experience, of course, I'm still a little skeptical as to does this really work, but now I'm putting my reputation online as well.
I bet.
By recording this experience. Second week, I'm demonstrating, and I demonstrated a squat, and I go, wow, I forgot I had this treatment. I go, that can't be right, because normally I would feel the pain in the squat position. So my client looked at me like, man, that was pretty good. I go, that's funny because I just had he goes, exactly, I knew you had your treatment 2 weeks ago.
It was only 2 weeks later.
2 weeks later. It's recorded. Now, Dr. Randy Woodward, this is amazing. I'm going into the beginning of week 3. Yep. So 2.5 weeks ago, I was in your office and you were explaining to me stem cell, what it would do for my meniscus tear. Yeah. I just did plyometric jump, guys, and to be honest with you, that was tough for me. I was a little afraid of that, but again, look at this. Here, boom, boom. Now, that doesn't happen when you have surgery. In 2.5 weeks.
So you go and you have the shot.
Shot.
After the shot, what did it feel like?
You know what? It didn't feel like anything.
Right.
I just felt something, but you know, I'm used to someone going in and changing and cutting and the whole deal. But when you just take a shot, I'm thinking, let's see how this works.
Right.
And Dr. Woodward did say, hey, you know what? Everyone experiences difference, and so I said, well, I'm going to record this. I'm going to be very candid. He goes, please do. And so I said, everything that happens, I'm going to share with my audience. I want them to see this. Because for me, the benefit for me is that if they're having these experiences, knees and shoulder, for me to get a client in to get fixed will benefit my business as well.
2 weeks later, after the shot, you're doing the squat and you're like, wait, this is supposed to hurt.
Exactly.
It didn't.
Not even a little bit. But after that, here's the exciting thing. I took it to the next level, of course, me being the trainer, and Randy's like, slow down. I said, no, this is feeling great. Mind you, I've been able to do this for the last almost year because I had the meniscus tear. And so when Dr. Woodward say slow down, they go, hey, no, don't tell me to slow down. Right. I'm experiencing this because this is great. So then I did a plyometric jump. Now what that is it's a term that the Russians came up with years ago. It's a way of training. Right. So I was jumping across the floor.
Oh.
Jumping.
Oh, no. And landing and bending.
And landing and bending in the squat position. And I go, this is interesting. Now, being very transparent, it felt a little sore. He said, that's to be expected. Third week later, the next week, I did it again. This time he was there. We recorded it. He goes, yeah, it feels better. So, and I even said it in the camera, I'm a little sore still, but it's not, aching. Or
Right.
It's a different sore beside a meniscus tear,
Right.
completely different. Fourth week, I leg pressed 400 pounds. I go, wow, this is great. And Dr.
Did you
Randy
feel
Woodward,
anything?
Nothing. He goes, Michael, so I says, no, I'm a trainer.
I'm
I
going
don't
to
know
push
what I'm
it.
doing. I'm going to push it. It's okay. Now, I think it was later, probably anywhere from the week 6 to week 8. I can't recall. I leg pressed 750 pounds. No, 705.
Wait, no, so tell me, for us people who don't understand what a leg
Okay.
press is, you're on your
I'm
back.
sitting back,
Uh-huh.
and it's called the sled.
Right,
And there's a 745-pound plates on each side.
right.
So I'm coming down and pushing this weight. And we're recording it, and Dr. Randy Woodward's right there recording it.
750,
705.
705
Right.
pounds.
Right, like 15
multiple
of you.
your body weight.
15 of you.
Oh God, bless you. I like you.
And so, but no soreness. Now, the challenge was I'm a sprinter. I was a sprinter in college. And I do a lot of fast twitch training. Let me explain what that is. It's movement, lateral movement, quick movement. And so that, to me, was my main reason for getting this treatment done, because I had to get back. I'm getting ready to do a video shoot.
Isn't there torque involved with stuff like that?
Absolutely, because you're going side to side.
That would
Imagine
hurt.
a tennis player or a sprinter.
Right.
Those are the kind of workouts we're doing. And so I had to be back 100%.
Right.
Now, it's never been 100%, but 97, 95. But I'm a little tougher than most guys. Most people would say you're at 100. But most guys my age don't do what I do.
Well, also you have a lot of muscle pulling on that
Exactly.
joint also.
I'm such a believer, it's not even funny, because can you imagine, and I told my clients, when you go in and have surgery, if you look at the downtime,
I know.
the recovery time, the fee, I mean, it's a whole different world.
The anesthesia.
All that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that part.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's just the surgery and recovery
Right.
time. And I couldn't afford that. I don't think anyone can afford that. There's no alternative, which is stem cell.
Right.
And so we had people at the facility going, Banks, I can't believe your recovery. But this is real time. There was no, this is real deal.
How long ago did this happen?
I bet you now I'm probably 3 months out.
Oh,
I'm sprinting, I'm running up hills. Now can you imagine running up a hill with a degree?
no.
Sprinting down hills, and so feel great. I'm still not 100%. I still get a little sore when I push it, but for the average person, based on what I do, because I'm a fitness trainer, I teach a program called Torch, where we're doing a lot of jumping and movement. I'm probably about 97, 98%. Now, mind you, if it were surgery, for
3
what I
months
do,
out?
oh, longer than that.
You'd be out of business.
I wouldn't be out of business, but I wouldn't be able to have the momentum and move like I move. It hurt my training ability.
Right.
Be able to train.
And how depressing for you also to sort of lose that time of, you constantly have to keep it
Time,
up.
tone, and muscle.
Yep.
Activity, everything. And so there was a point where it was tough for me to walk upstairs. So mind you see a personal trainer walking in with a band around his knee. You were going to think twice about working with that personal trainer, right?
Well, exactly. Look what he
Exactly.
did to himself.
Look what he did to himself.
How did you do that to yourself?
Years and years I played football years ago when I was in years and years of that.
So it's just constant abuse.
I mean, it's a common, unfortunately, meniscus tear is becoming more common now than people think.
Now, would you have this treatment again?
Are you kidding me? I'm going to get it in my neck, I'm going to get it in my shoulder, in my other knee.
What's wrong with your neck? What's wrong with your shoulder?
Nothing. Is called preventive medicine.
Ah.
I look at what's happening as we age, and no matter how, and I'm an active guy, as we age, there's going to be injuries that come up, having the lifestyle that I have. So if you love to ski, hike, and we're aging, guess what? Why not take a look at doing some preventive medicine ideas and doing your knees and your shoulders?
Wow. So both shoulders you think you do, or does one twinge a little?
I have one that kind of twinge a little bit, but I think it's more of for me, for what I do, I think it's a way of just being preventive. Get it done now.
So you have a client who's coming in, is like, I really want to push my workout, but gosh, my knee's bothering me, or my elbow just isn't what it used to be. I'm afraid to push it. I'm afraid to injure. What would you say to them?
Well, not only what would I say, what I have said, I've sent Dr. Randy Woodward several clients, because I'll say to my client, like I'm saying to you, if you want to have an active lifestyle, you can go the old way and do the traditional way, your surgery.
Right.
But here's the challenge there. When it comes to training, being fit, It's going to probably take, for me, for what I do, it would have easily taken a year for me to be fully recovered the way I need to be recovered, okay? But you're going to cut the time of recovery time down completely. You're not having surgery.
Yeah.
You know, you're not walking around with a cast and going through physical therapy.
Right.
Who wants to do that?
Yeah.
If there's a better way to do that, and I'm going to tell you something, money doesn't mean anything when it comes to challenging your lifestyle. And so no matter what the price is, pay the price, because my lifestyle is more important than money.
I had a doctor once say to me, always start with the least invasive first. You can
Exactly.
always go to the most
Exactly.
invasive later.
Sure.
Why not start with the least invasive first? So that sounds like this is, you know, a wonderful option.
Well, you know, in my industry, we look at this thing called baby boomers. I'm at the end of the baby boomers. There's 10,000 of us retiring a day, but they want to be active. Guess what's happening?
Yeah.
They're going on a bike, shoulder, skiing, knee.
Right.
I mean, every day, a client of mine is having, especially this time of the year, they're having injuries and knees and hamstrings and shoulders and back, and it's just part of, unfortunately, aging.
Yeah.
And we can prevent some of those things by stem cell. And I've never endorsed a product.
Wow. So,
But when you have a personal experience with something,
right.
this is no get rich scheme or tell your cousin about it.
Right.
This is called being able to have a life and an active lifestyle, period.
Wow. So this kind of changed the playing field for you a little bit.
Absolutely, because not only it changed for me, it changed for my clients. Also, for me, it gives me a tool, because I have clients that come in, like we were saying earlier, they're experiencing knee, back, or joints. It's not even a question. And I'll sit down and say, here's my little video. And so I'm a big time, I'm passionate about it, I share it. But when you experience that, and it cuts your pain, no pain. I mean, think about the surgery, there's pain.
Oh, yeah.
Recovery, pain,
Yeah.
downtime. All those things add up. And time is valuable for me, as it is for you.
Yes.
And so I'm hearing now NFL players are doing it now, NBA players are, and so it's a smart way to do it.
Well, I think most of the elite athletes have been
Right.
doing it.
Right. Well, we need to consider ourselves elite. We just don't make the money they do.
You know, that's a really nice way of looking at it.
You
You
need
know, I'd
to.
like to think of myself as an elite
Absolutely.
something.
Absolutely. I tell my guys all the time, and I'm saying the term guys, I really specifically work with demographics, and that's people that's 40 to 60 years of age.
Right.
Look, to me, the real edge in competing in the workplace is being fit, period. So I always say, here's my saying. You wanna know what my saying is?
Yes.
Being fit is a new currency.
Oh, that's a great saying.
How can you compete at 50 years old with a 25-year-old kid? You're gonna have the energy
Yep.
and vitality to compete.
And then, of course, sound body, sound mind.
Absolutely. When you have energy, you can do anything. So energy is everything to me. So energy and also being fit is a new currency.
Well, thank you so much for sharing
Thank
your
you.
story with
Hope I
us.
didn't talk too much. I
Fascinating.
love what I do, and this has been a blessing in a big way.
Glad to hear it.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Alan Gavick, and I am the Director of Physician Education for Livion, a stem cell company here in Southern California.
When you say physician education, tell me what that entails.
Because of the stem cell field and how new it is into the market, we realized early on that physicians really need to understand the truth about stem cells instead of a lot of myth that's been out there for a long time. So in education, we do seminars and society meetings and really just educate physicians on not only the science behind it, but then the potential clinical applications that are being used not only in the United States but throughout the world.
What has been sort of like your biggest hurdle when it comes to educating physicians?
Overcoming myth,
Yeah.
because you can read anything on the internet, but really truth about what goes on with the science of the cells. It's not science fiction, it's biology. And we have to get back to our roots and understand really the biology that's involved. The science is fairly simple, but it's dispelling myth and getting to real truth so people can have an understanding. You know, people used to think that they would get an injection of stem cells, then hear harp music and see the face of God, and everything would change. But that's not science. So we really have to get over the myth and really train in the science.
Right. Well, what's been the most gratifying thing about sharing this information with physicians?
It's eye-opening.
Yeah.
Because instead of it being a mythical science fiction Doctor Who type thing that's going on, we're able to see that physicians understand the basic science. They start to remember the science that they had in undergraduate and in medical school, and these lights come on and they're like, oh, this is not myth, this is real science here, and we can learn really how to treat patients from what they understand, which is a scientific basis, and then they realize we can potentially treat patients for the cause and not just the symptoms of what's going on with any particular disease process. So it's really all very exciting, but it's that eye-opening moment of, wow.
So in all the years you've been doing this, what have been the most major changes that you've seen?
This whole thing started out with bone marrow, and it was very exciting to see the potential clinical applications with bone marrow. Very rapidly, the science of stem cells in adipose tissue was become known. So then we had bone marrow and adipose. They realized early on that there were some potential problems because the quality and quantity of those cells was dependent on the age and the health of the patient. So after that, then we saw the emergence of amniotic tissue and fluid, which was helpful. It worked very well, but we soon found out the potential to have live cells in the product was there were few, if any, really live cells. So it explained why results could be fairly good, but they were not very sustaining. And then the newest technology really to emerge so far is stem cells derived from the umbilical cord blood of live, healthy birth babies. It took away the problem of an older stem cell from, say, a 60 or 70-year-old in their bone marrow or adipose, because now we have young cells. It took away the inconsistency of the number of cells in an amniotic tissue, because now we have a young, vibrant, healthy product that has quality and consistent cells. And as time moves on, if we were to do this in another year, we would be talking about the next generations that are coming on. So, I mean, there were major changes took place so far. It's just the beginning.
Wow. So, I mean, you go on the internet, you see all kinds of claims, you see all kinds of information. Tell me about the studies that back up this information.
Studies that back it up, there's a lot of anecdotal information out there, which we see and we have to be very careful about.
Right.
When we do comparative studies on bone marrow versus adipose versus umbilical cord, they've almost all been done at the microbiology level.
Right.
So the International Journal of Cellular Biologics has done several comparative values on what a 50 or 60-year-old bone marrow or adipose tissue stem cell looks like compared to a 9-month-old umbilical cord stem cell. And it gives us an in vitro look from a clinical or from a laboratory setting as to the differentiation of these cells, and it really opened our eyes a lot, because we could see a 60 or 70-year-old bone marrow or adipose cell, and when they were tested, you could see that they age much more rapidly, which makes sense because they're already 50, 60, 70 years old. Their ability to actually duplicate and create consistent growth factors diminishes very rapidly because of their age. And when they compared that against umbilical cord stem cells, it's just no comparison because of the young vibrantness. So those clinical trials are in vitro in the laboratory.
Right.
What we look for down the road is really to have in vivo in our body clinical trials. But we just don't know if we're ever going to get to that, because as the new technology continues to emerge, we kind of have to count on our in vitro information as far as how the cells actually function.
So explain to me how the cells actually function and use small words.
So what happens is when we have a damaged cell in our body, it puts off a chemical signal, like an SOS.
Right.
I'm damaged over here. Umbilical cord stem cells are attracted to that, and they will attach themselves typically to a nearby blood vessel. From that site, they will then give nutritional support to this damaged cell. They will nurture it back to a healthy state. and that's called paracrine signaling. It's cell-to-cell communication, whereas if you have healthy cells and one becomes mildly damaged, the healthy cells help that back. But when you have a large amount of healthy cells, which institutes a disease process, you need external help. And this is what these umbilical cord cells see it, they react to it, and they nurture those cells back to a healthy state.
Right. So tell me the difference between the bone marrow, between adipose and umbilical cord stem cells. Like, how can they each do something different? Is one better than the other?
If a stem cell is typically a stem cell. In its undifferentiated state, a stem cell is basically a blank check. It can do what it needs to do. What we find is if you're a 20, 30-year-old athlete and you have an athletic injury, by all means, you should try to use your own cells because it's going to be the most effective. They're young, they're healthy cells. The problem in most of the people today that are requiring stem cell therapy are not 20, 30 years old, and they're not healthy. They're typically at least 60 or 50 or 60 plus, usually with some secondary disease process, like some type of autoimmune disorder. So while in a perfect setting, they're all equal. We're all created equal. The problem with the bone marrow and the adipose, and was seen very early on in research, it's directly dependent on the age and the health of the patient. So that's why the exciting umbilical cord stem cell came in, because it's young, it's vibrant, we know it's very safe, and it's just taking this kind to that next level.
Also, I imagine the harvesting of bone marrow and the harvesting of fat cells requires some procedure.
It is. It's a minor procedure, unless you're the one that has it, and you might not consider it so minor. But bone marrow aspirate, it requires a simple surgical procedure, the same thing with adipose, in that you have to do a liposuction to get it. This is easier because you literally just take it out of a minus 80 degrees centigrade freezer, warm it in the palm of your hands for 3 or 4 minutes, pull it into the syringe and put it into the joint, and it's done. Instead of being a 2 to 4 hour procedure, it's a 10-minute procedure, and you don't have to have any surgical procedures done on you.
What are some of the more sort of interesting myths that you've heard about stem cells, and dispel them for us?
There are a lot. Because when we read literature, it gets confusing between clinical and research. Right. So people used to think that when these cells get into my body, because when you look at them in the lab, an umbilical cord stem cell in the lab will duplicate itself every 28 hours for 60 or 70 or 80 generations. Well, it was just assumed then clinically that when it goes into your body, this 10 million cells becomes 20, becomes 40, becomes 80, becomes 160 million cells. It's not the case. And a big myth was, oh, these cells are duplicating in my body. They're not. Stem cells do duplicate in the lab in an in vitro culture. Once they enter our body, we do not have the duplication process. It's a signaling process, is how the cells principally work.
That's interesting. Any others?
Concentration of cells is a big thing. If somebody is going to have, say, a knee injection, and they're going to get a concentration of 10 million cells, they think that's 10 million stem cells. It's not. A percentage of that is stem cells. Typically, about 3 to 4% is stem cells. And the stem cells have a very specific function in anti-inflammatory and immunomodulation. It's able to modulate the immune system, which is typically imbalanced in a damaged area. The other part of the cells are live nucleated cells. They're called mononuclear cells. And basically, the majority of these mononuclear cells just create growth factors. So when they're attached to a blood vessel next to damaged tissue, what do they need? Do they need blood vessel repair? So a growth factor called VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, will supply that. Or FGF2, fibroblast growth factor 2. It will stimulate these healthy cells actually to begin to replace themselves. So getting back to the myth of stem cells, you have some unknown umbilical cord tissue from a baby in somewhere in Southern California, and you think those cells are going to become cartilage in your knee. Not the case. When the cells come into your body, the mesenchymal stem cells will regulate the inflammation and modulate the immune system, while the other cells will stimulate our own cells to actually regenerate themselves. and to propagate within that damaged area.
So you're really using your body's own sort of defense system to repair itself.
Correct. It's using our body, but in a highly inflamed area. Even though our body is producing growth factors, it cannot overcome those growth factor particulates, or the inflammatory particulates, principally tumor necrosis factor alpha, which is the most common one, and our growth factors aren't able to thrive in those areas. So once the stem cells are actually able to inhibit that process, balance the immune system, now those other cells that are creating growth factors are just stimulating our body to do what we would naturally do if we were in a younger, healthier state.
Why do you think that cord stem cell is a better product than other options?
Principally because with bone marrow and adipose tissue, it's directly related to the age and the health of the patient. And with amniotic fluid, due to the processing that's necessary according to federal regulations, there are no live cells, and if there are very few live cells associated with that. When you compare that to umbilical cord blood, which has live nucleated cells that will continue to secrete growth factors for weeks and even months inside the body, and the stem cells in there will continue to have their function for weeks and even months in the body. It's just a far superior product because we have consistent quality, we have consistent quantity of the cells, and we're actually able to have a little better prediction on what results we'll see from that.
Is there any downside to this?
There's no downside physiologically as to what it could do to your body. We know that there are certain things that we have to watch out for. The only FDA approved cryopreservant is DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide. So in our product, there's up to 5% dimethyl sulfoxide. So if you happen to be sensitive or allergic to sulfa, you could potentially have a reaction to it. We know how to blunt that reaction and take care of it, so it's not a problem. But that's principally the only thing that we would really look at for a potential mild complication.
Right. For instance, I'm allergic to sulfa. So what would I do?
So they would give you the injection along with low dose of dexamethasone, which would be 4 milligrams per milliliter of dexamethasone, and that would effectively blunt the sulfa reaction.
What are some of the criticisms that you've heard about stem cell therapy?
Well, part of the criticism is myth. You know, where do you get these umbilical cord stem cells? Well, they come from the umbilical cord blood of a live, healthy birth baby. The myths are it's from an abortion clinic or it's and those sorts of things, and it's not. I mean, these are live, healthy babies. We need that because all the testing that goes on, we need to have live, healthy cells.
Right.
We can't have damaged cells. So that's one of the things that people believe that ethically it could be different.
Right.
The other thing is people will mistake the words of, remember back in the 80s when George H.W. Bush said we won't be doing research, human research on stem cells. It's because at that time, the major place when you could get stem cells were from the embryo. And it could become a right to life issue in killing the embryo. Well, that embryonic phase ends at about week 10 after gestation. The cells that we get are approximately week 40. So it's a completely different cell. It's not a right to life issue. It's not also what they knew at that time, that these young embryonic cells actually pass on DNA. We don't want that. After the 10th week of gestation, they no longer have that process of passing on DNA. Now the only thing these cells do is give us appropriate signaling in order to try to regenerate and heal ourselves.
So what kind of protocols are followed when they actually harvest these cells?
They're extensive. In the hospital, they follow protocols for the American Association of Tissue Banks. Take, for example, 1 month before proposed delivery, Mama goes in for her meeting with her OB/GYN. That's typically when they ask her if she would like to keep the umbilical cord for herself. If she says no, then many times they'll ask them if they would like to donate it. If she says yes, then she has to go under medical review, social review, and have a blood test in order to make sure that she falls under the American Association of Tissue Banks. When it comes time for delivery, once the baby is delivered, then a registered technician will get the umbilical cord, take it to a clean room, transfer the blood product into a bag, deliver it to the lab. The first thing the lab has to do is test that cord blood. They send it out for all of the testing that you can imagine, communicable diseases primarily. Then the lab will process, and once they have that finished product of cells, they must then take a sample of that, send it to a different third-party lab that tests it for sterility. All that time, these cells must be kept in quarantine until all of these certificates come back clean that say, yes, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, then they can be used for human consumption.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot.
That's a lot.
I mean, the FDA has done their job. They understand that they must regulate the industry in order to keep the patient population safe. So, and that is also what drives up the cost,
Right.
because the compliance is very significant, especially from the laboratory level.
Do you feel that the FDA in any way has been a hindrance?
I think a little bit because they want to take it slow. But interestingly enough, around the world, where does everybody want to get their stem cell products from? The United States, because they know that we have to follow the strict guidelines of the FDA. So on one hand, we're like, we want to run faster, we want to run faster, and they're not allowing us. Yet on the other hand, the reason we have a superior product is because of those regulations. So I think we kind of got to bounce the balls both ways, and don't like this, but you know, the other side is we know we're in a safe margin.
Can you share any examples of stem cell therapies that you think have been particularly successful?
Joint therapy has been incredibly successful. We see patients, there was a study done of 396 patients who were scheduled to have joint replacement surgery, and they opted to have stem cell surgery in the joint. 1 year later, only 12% of those patients had had a joint replacement surgery. Every one of them, all the others, were very satisfied with their results. So we talk about joints and soft tissue. I could give you literature from around the world of amazing results with Lyme disease and, you know, potential helping with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and all these autoimmune disorders like Crohn's disease, even with things like autism. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on. The United States, we're kind of taking a slow approach to the systemic applications because that's the position that the FDA has taken right now, and we respect that because we need to learn more about that before we get into it. So just joint repair, not having to have a joint replacement, if that was the only thing that we could ever talk about, that's pretty amazing.
Well, for me, I'm looking at the economic and the sort of the social aspect of having an operation. You know, you're in the hospital, you're being opened up, there's a recovery period, there's, you know, it's a very big event, and it's also a very expensive event.
It is.
How do you think this can impact the way we look at medicine and the economic impact of medicine?
Well, part of what most of the companies are doing now is creating IRBs, Institutional Review Board studies. And by creating these IRBs, we can start to collect data on, you know, what these injections to a knee or a hip or a shoulder or an ankle, and start to collect that data in a manner that can be put into a white paper so that we have multiple facilities throughout the United States are gathering data and putting it together. Insurance companies will begin to look at that and go, you mean a $5,000 knee injection versus a $100,000 joint replacement? You know, we can treat the cause instead of the symptoms. We're going down that path very rapidly. It's going to take a few years because the data really needs to be put together. Most of what we see now is a lot of anecdotal information without really hardcore data. That's what we need to move forward is the data. That's also what we try to do as a company, collect this data so that we can really further this beautiful science, but make it effective. Because once it becomes insurance accepted, now you're going to have global access to it. Versus now it's a little bit limited because of certain cost factors.
What made you want to go into this?
I practiced surgery of the ankle and foot for 15 years and became frustrated with the system itself. Had an opportunity to sell my practice And I started working in corporate cardiac, and they were looking for some clinical applications to stem cell and cardiac. And it really piqued my interest. At that time, it was primarily BMAC adipose and amniotic tissue. But we were seeing around the world what was going on with umbilical cord. And it was becoming very exciting. So while we were developing products, specifically of amniotic and placental, when this became aware that in the United States we were going to have the ability to use umbilical cord stem cells, we had just seen the progress in 15 years throughout the world that we knew we had to be definitely involved with this. And not involved only from just a business standpoint, but involved with ethically this needs to be moved forward. This is a great gift that we have a responsibility to really try to take it to the next level.
Where do you think we're going to be in 5 years?
Oh, Lord, I can't tell you where we'll be in 1 year.
Yeah.
So I couldn't guess 5 years.
Right.
I know the research that's going on right now, in a year, will just blow away what we're talking about today. We're talking about exosomes and microRNA and how these signaling processes actually work inside the body and cross into the blood-brain barrier, into the brain, and how these things start to work. This is an infancy stage. This is like when computers came out and you went out and bought that 386 and 3 months later the 486 came out, and then it's the Pentium. You know, it's moving at such a rapid technological rate. I couldn't begin to guess where in 5 years. But I know that within 1 year, we will be significantly charged forward, and stem cells will be a fun thing that we'll talk about, but they'll only be part of the conversation, not the conversation.
How do you think this is going to impact how we age?
I believe it's going to impact us very positively. We know it has a regenerative effect on the body. It's able to help our cells to heal better. We probably have some unintended consequences that if we live longer, healthier lives, now we're going to have to deal with a bit of population and food supply and water supply and that sort of thing. But I think that as this beautiful science emerges, I don't know if we'll see a longer life, but my hope and belief would be that we'll have a greater quality to that life that we will currently live.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to us about this. It's fascinating.
It's my pleasure. It's really a passion.
I can see.
Thank you.
So we are here in Bountiful, Utah at Stem Cell Facility. Tell me your name and why you're here.
My name is Stephen Gardner, and 4 months ago I was clipped from behind by 2 dogs that were playing and fell to the ground immediately in pain, and the pain didn't go away, and so after about a week and a half I went and met with an orthopedic surgeon, and he jerked my leg around and dug his thumb in, and he said, you know, it doesn't feel like anything's torn. And we took some film and we don't see any tears, but it's behaving very strangely. It's still very swollen, and I had only about 50% mobility.
Oh, wow.
And so over the last few months, I've done exercises and stretches to get that to open up, and I'm back to that point where I was before, except for there's this tightness, almost like inflammation still in there.
Right.
And so my hope with this is that I'll be back to 100%. I want to be moving. I want to be able to go up and down stairs without pain.
So you're an active young guy. I mean, having this kind of pain seems somewhat pointless, no?
I would just want to get back to 100%. You know, I'm young. I have 3 young children that are demanding on moving, and I would love to see the results that I've read about with the stem cell.
So you walked in today. What's your pain level?
Probably at about a 5 or a 6.
Oh, really? So this is significant.
Yeah, especially on stairs.
Stairs, and then I'm sure, you know, running around after kids doesn't feel great.
Yeah, by the end of the day, the leg feels fatigued. I can tell a difference from the left knee to the right knee.
So what do you hope to get from this?
My hope is to get back to 100%, have that range of motion, have that mobility, be able to climb stairs without pain.
So what do you think the procedure is going to be like?
I'm hopeful that it won't be painful. I read up on it. It shouldn't be, so I'm very optimistic.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I hope we can check in with you again in about a month and see how you're doing.
Yes, I would love that.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm just cleaning you off. This is chlorhexidine. There is real risk for this. The only risks are infection or bleeding, and we haven't had anything like that. So if you were to scrape yourself, you'd have a risk for bleeding, and that's essentially, we're just going in with a needle.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. And then this is just an alcohol swab, a little extra. Just make sure you're clean. And you'll essentially just feel the needle stick, and after that, maybe just a little bit of pressure, but it shouldn't hurt.
Okay.
All right, and we've got it all drawn up here. Got 3 cc's stem cells. We're ready to be injected into the left knee joint space. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
All right, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Good. All right, and we're just going to confirm with the ultrasound. Okay, and you'll feel a little bit of pressure as we inject. You doing okay?
Yeah.
Any discomfort right now?
No, I can feel it moving, but it's not bothering me.
Good. And I can have you take that. All right. And they're in.
Okay.
Any discomfort?
No, I feel fine.
Okay, we'll just put a Band-Aid on that and you are good to go.
Great,
You can
thank
do
you very
anything you
much.
want today. You can shower, you can go for a run. Just look for any signs of infection. We would want to hear back from you. And if you're in a whole lot of pain, we would want to hear from you. Otherwise, we'll just follow up with you.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'm Dr. Paul Addison. I own a physical medicine and rehab company, and along with my medical director, we provide a range of services for patients from regenerative medicine all the way through the physical therapy portion of it.
Let's talk about the regenerative medicine part of your practice. What kinds of procedures do you guys do?
Yeah, so we really like doing the stem cell injections for people that have pain in their joints and soft tissue. And I find it works really well as an adjunct to the physical therapy and rehab to do that first, because even as a highly qualified doctor of physical therapy, we don't heal the body. We have to get the body to heal first, and then we rehabilitate after that.
So what kind of stem cells do you guys use in your practice?
We use the umbilical cord stem cells. I know the adipose and bone marrow work well as well, but just for the ease of the medical practitioners to be able to do their work, we really like the umbilical cord stem cells, and we get great results from it too.
So how is it actually applied?
It's applied just for a joint injection. So you take the 1 cc, inject it into the joint, and then we have a rehab protocol that goes about 2 months to make sure that the person can reload their joint properly and not beat up that tissue that's trying to reform.
So it's actually injected directly into the joint?
Right, or for most people with aged knees, degenerative knees, arthritis, things like that. A lot of times we'll inject it into the soft tissue, but mostly the stem cells are used for joints.
What kinds of regenerative stuff do you do after you inject these stem cells?
Well, we have more of a protocol afterwards. So we'll do 4 days of being offloaded, and then about a month of returning to regular activity, and then another month of returning to sports after that. So the stem cells do the work themselves. We just try to allow them to do their work and get good outcomes.
So how many cases are you treating like this a month, let's say?
We only do about 10 a month, so not a really high volume clinic, but it is a new field, and so there's a lot of people that are not aware of it, but we do about 10 a month. It's been quite successful.
So tell me about some of the success stories that you've had, or do you have some favorite cases that you want to share?
I've got one guy that's a financial advisor, just retired. He came in, he was able to lift his arm here, and just 2 weeks later, he was putting dishes above his head. Putting dishes away in the cabinet. So he was amazed. We've had all kinds of people come in on walkers having knee pain and then be able to go walk 3 miles a couple months later, with their family and things like that.
So not being able to lift your arm, what is that called? Frozen shoulder or something?
His was more from arthritis.
Oh, it was?
Yeah,
it was
so
arthritis.
You can have frozen shoulder as well, but his was from arthritis.
Explain to me what arthritis is and how the stem cell treatment can treat that.
Yeah, arthritis is a degenerative condition of the cartilage where the cartilage starts to wear away in the joint, and the stem cells help to turn your own body's natural healing back on and start laying down new cartilage cells to try to slow down the process, stop the process. It's not considered a cure or anything today as of yet, but it is very well known to help with arthritis.
So tell me how many cases your practice sees a month where you utilize stem cell therapies?
We see about 10 patients a month for patients that choose to do the stem cell therapy as an adjunct to the rest of the things they do. We've gotten great results. I can say we've had nobody ask for a refund. Everybody's referred one person or more, and everybody's been quite happy with the results.
So in treating patients, there's always a side effect. What's the side effect?
With stem cells, there really isn't one, which is crazy to say, but you always have the side effects of an injection. You can get pain, swelling, bruising, things like that. But there's been no rejection, there's been no long-term inflammation, things like that, no infection.
No complaints?
No complaints. There is a small spike in pain around 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, just because the inflammatory process is working very aggressively then.
Right.
But inflammation is what heals your body. We've been doing it for years and years and years to heal our body.
So how is utilizing stem cell therapy affecting your business?
I find it really helps to give patients hope that they will actually get the results that they're looking for. I think far too often physicians and patients as well put a lot of stock into physical therapists because we are good at our craft, but we do not reverse degenerative conditions. And this is something that helps to either slow down or help the body to heal those degenerative conditions so that we can then rehabilitate the person after that.
In some ways, it probably makes rehabilitation more effective.
It definitely does. It makes it easier, more effective. You have this body healing, not just continuing to regenerate, not just continuing to degenerate as you are trying to work on the strength and range of motion.
So tell me about the renaissance in medicine.
Well, I think this is one of the first new approaches in medicine that has been different, apart from doing surgery, which is great. There's a lot of great orthopedic surgeons. The pharmaceuticals surely work well to turn off the pain signal, but this is really the start of cellular medicine to start to heal the body's tissues.
Where do you see this in 5 years?
Hopefully more widely accepted as a first line of defense, not a last resort. We have so many patients coming to us that have done the drugs, done the cortisone, and are slated for a knee replacement, and they get good success with this. So hopefully it's done first, not last in about 5 years, even maybe going as far as insurance paying for it, because it will decrease those downstream expenses from the insurance company.
So what is it easier to rehabilitate from, a shot or surgery?
Definitely from a stem cell injection. There's no downtime. The person is not in pain. It's fantastic.
I also imagine the muscles atrophy a little bit after surgery because you're not actually on something. You're in a bed for a couple of days.
That's right.
You've had anesthesia. So with this, you pretty much take the person where they are and rehabilitate almost immediately. Is
That's
that
right. And also when you have pain in a joint, the nerves that innervate the joint also stop working to innervate the muscle. So you do get that atrophy, and along with the bed rest and just the decreased in functional ability. So the stem cells can help to mitigate that, you're right.
So, who stands to lose when stem cell therapies take over?
I don't know if anybody would lose, but there surely will be some division in the marketplace with hopefully the drug companies not getting as many prescriptions in people. We really want to try to get back to more natural healing, and doing biological treatment is natural healing.
So if you had a family member that was suffering from something, would you give this to them?
Absolutely, yeah. I've had my mom do it for her wrist. She had arthritis in her wrist. My dad's done it for his knees and his lower back.
Oh, so you've done this to your parents?
I haven't physically done the injection, but my staff has, yeah.
And tell me about their results.
My dad got great results. He's back to snowboarding and he's 70 years old and his lower back doesn't hurt anymore. Sciatica is diminished. and my mom's wrist is doing better.
So tell me more about sciatica, because I know a lot of people who suffer from that.
Yeah, using stem cells along with PRP can really help to regenerate the blood flow around the nerves, help the nerves start to heal, decrease the pain as well. But along with sciatica, you do have to look further upstream, sometimes into the spine, and see what's going on there.
So tell me about your dad.
Well, my dad has had degenerative disc disease in his back, arthritis in his knee. He was skiing a lot through his whole life and picked up snowboarding recently and couldn't do that even because of his knees. But after having the stem cell injections in his knees, he's back to snowboarding, can walk, can squat. So it was pretty remarkable recovery.
So how quickly was that recovery for him?
About 2 months. It still takes about 2 months for the full recovery.
And tell me about your mother's wrist.
She's not as active as my dad is, but she's certainly had a lot of pain in her wrist. Wasn't able to move as much, and the stem cell therapy helped to recover her wrist. She has full range of motion and no pain now.
No pain.
Right.
And what was the time between the injection and her feeling 100%?
About 2 months. Yeah,
Really?
So for everybody, it's about 2 months that I've seen.
What would the rehabilitation have been from, let's say, wrist surgery?
It's unclear. Between 2 and 3 months if you get a good result, but unfortunately, a lot of surgeries don't have the outcomes as much as people would like. There is a lot of pain reduction, but it depends on what you have surgery on.
So is there any downside from getting these therapies?
Not really. There's a few things you have to look out for. A patient that has maybe sulfa allergy, they do use DMSO to help to cryopreserve the cells. And then you're not supposed to do it with certain other conditions, but that's really more for a medical team to discuss. As a doctor of physical therapy, I don't get into that as much.
Right. So what would your recommendation be if you have, typical middle-aged patient comes in, knee pain, can't play golf, can't play tennis anymore? What would you recommend?
Really, the VIP package is 3 PRP injections, a stem cell injection on that 3rd PRP. Wait a little while and do your viscosupplementation, and then go through a rehab, hopefully including an underwater treadmill, and then you work with a sports-specific trainer to get back to golf. But that's kind of our VIP best program that we've created.
And what kind of outcomes have you seen from this?
Depends on how degenerated the person is, but most people get about a 6 out of 10 pain reduction, and they say their joint feels about 10 years younger.
Wow. 10 years, I'll take that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you so much for coming here and speaking with us about this. This has been very, very interesting.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. We interviewed over 60 people all over the country from all walks of life, and there's some very, very important, really essential information that we would like to share with you.
There are so many people that are suffering from chronic illnesses and sometimes even life-threatening situations that stem cells can actually change the world, change their life. This is something that we want you to be educated on.
There's a vast gap of information between what the public knows and what's out there, and we wanted to bridge that gap.
We want you to join us. Help us to share this wonderful information. Right there are all the links on the page. So simple, that's all you need to do. Hope you enjoyed episode 1, and we'll see you next for episode 2.